Thanks to the recent release of the autobiography of Bob Iger, we got a ton of information on what it was like to make The Force Awakens, as well as what it was like for Disney to purchase Star Wars from Lucasfilm and George Lucas. The last few days we've explored in some videos what George Lucas initially thought of The Force Awakens and Disney buying Star Wars, ultimately revealing to us that he was disappointed with The Force Awakens because he thought it was nothing new, and that Disney was simply retreading old ground, a major criticism that many people had about The Force Awakens post-release. Today though, we also learned some additional information about the deal that went on between Disney and Lucas, revealing that there was one major term that Disney had for George Lucas if they were going to buy the properties from him. That being that George Lucas would give up all of his creative control, and that Disney wanted to be allowed to make the movies that they wanted to make, with them actually buying various story details that George Lucas had for Star Wars episodes 7, 8, and 9, but ultimately deciding not to use them. This is the quote though from the autobiography about them actually purchasing these ideas from George Lucas, but also taking away creative control from the creator. I promised that we would be open to George Lucas's ideas, but we would be under no obligation to fulfill them. George thought that our buying the story treatments was a tactic promise that we'd follow them, and then he was disappointed that his story was being discarded. We'd intentionally created a world that was visually and tonally connected to earlier films. We did this not to stray too far from what people loved and expected from Star Wars, and George was criticizing us for the very thing we were trying to do. These comments are really interesting, and before this release, I didn't know that George Lucas did actually sell some various story points to Disney about Star Wars. And although Disney was not obligated to use any of these ideas, George Lucas was ultimately very disappointed that they did not. As Bob Iger puts it, he believed that they ultimately would after they purchased them, although there was no promise made. I think it is compelling that Disney was not willing to purchase Star Wars from George Lucas unless he gave up complete creative control. They didn't just want the rights to the movies and all of the merchandise and money, they wanted the creative control as well, and they wanted to tell their own stories, which I can understand, but I can also understand why George Lucas was disappointed, as again, Disney did actually buy his brief outlines for episodes 7, 8, and 9, and Disney ultimately decided to discard them, not using the input of the creator when he believed that they would, although they never explicitly made a deal that they were going to use some of his ideas. But what are your guys' thoughts on all of this, and this entire situation, and Lucasfilm and George Lucas seemingly coming at odds over the Star Wars deal, and George Lucas believing that Disney was going to use some of his ideas for the sequel trilogy, but Disney not willing to purchase Star Wars unless they didn't have to? I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions on this whole situation in the comments down below. If we could try to get this video to 4,000 likes in the first 24 hours, I would appreciate it a great deal, as the like button helps out way more than I think you guys realize. Anyway, my friends, thank you guys so much for watching the video. May the Force be with you, and have a great day.